evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. On Saturday night, as you may now have read, a 22-year-old man called Anderson Lee Aldrich walked into a gay nightclub in Colorado Springs and opened fire. By the time he was subdued by patrons, he had murdered 5 people and injured another 25. You've seen this story before, but no matter how many times you've seen it, it never stops being horrifying. And it shouldn't stop. Violence and cruelty should always horrify us every single time. When we start to become cynical about the deaths of other human beings, we have lost something essential to our humanity. Unfortunately, you're seeing that. So the most obvious question is, why did Anderson Lee Aldrich shoot 30 people? And the truth is, we don't know. We do know he was clearly a troubled person. Last summer, he threatened to blow up his mother's house with a bomb. Authorities had to evacuate the neighborhood during the 4-hour standoff that ensued. Eventually, he surrendered.
You're seeing this video first on CNN that shows the alleged gunman, 22-year-old Anderson Lee Aldrich, surrendering to law enforcement. This is just a year ago, in June of 2021, after allegedly making a bomb threat on his own mother.
So after that happened, he, of course, was arrested and charged with first-degree kidnapping and felony menacing. But then the local district attorney, a man called Michael J. Allen, did not pursue charges. Why? We reached out to Allen's office today to find out why, but he did not get back to us, so we can only guess. We do know what the effect was. Because Aldrich was never charged with a crime and his arrest record was sealed, his violent past did not show up in background checks. Threatening to murder his own mother did not prevent him from buying a firearm, even under Colorado's so-called red flag law, which was designed to prevent that very thing. So those are the facts. That's what we know so far. Once again, authorities failed to keep the public safe. They didn't do their job. You may recognize now a pattern, because you have seen that before. As for Aldrich's motive in shooting strangers, we can only guess. And we're not going to guess, both because guessing would be dishonest and irresponsible. You can't just make up a story because it suits your pre-existing beliefs. But more to the point, we're not going to guess because it would dishonor the memories of the 5 people who were just murdered in Colorado Springs. These were human beings. They were Americans. They were not props in a larger ideological war. And to reduce them to that is wrong. That's exactly what many politicians are doing right now. Within hours of the shootings, Joe Biden and his allies used this tragedy as a pretext for disarming the law-abiding population of the country. We need more gun control, Joe Biden said predictably, notwithstanding the fact that Colorado's existing gun control laws, which are extensive, did not prevent this attack. So it was a contemptible and heartless and deeply cynical display of political opportunism. But it didn't stop with gun control, because in fact, the Second Amendment is not the freedom that threatens the people in charge the most. No, that would be the First Amendment, which is your right to say what you sincerely believe. That is the right, the first in our Bill of Rights, that terrifies them the most. Your words are a greater threat than any firearm. They must censor you, or else they lose power. It is that simple. So these horrifying murders in Colorado over the weekend quickly became a pretext for yet more censorship of your speech. You are responsible for this, they told you, because you said the wrong things. You are guilty of stochastic terrorism, inspiring violence by your beliefs. Anderson Lee Aldrich committed mass murder because you complained about the sexualizing of children. Every time you object to drag time story hour for 5th graders, or point out that genital mutilation is being committed on minors, which it is, every time you say that, you are putting people's lives at risk. Now that seems implausible, and yet many are making this claim. Many have made it over the past 24 hours. Watch, for example, Brandy Zadrozny of NBC.
Online, including this Libs of TikTok account, which feeds larger media like Fox News stories. What has happened is a demonization of LGBTQ people, calling them groomers and pedophiles. This type of thing, whether we can say it's motive or not, what we know is that it's just another reason why LGBTQ people are scared.
So there it is, right there. When you point out the truth, indisputably, and the truth is that some adults in this country, apparently a growing number, have a deeply unhealthy fixation on the sexuality of children. When you say that out loud, you get people killed. That is what Brandy Zadrozny is saying. And by saying that, Brandy Zadrozny and the many people like her are effectively defending that same deeply unhealthy fixation on the sexuality of children. By the way, it's absolutely real. You're not imagining that. It's happening. The evidence is everywhere, and it comes to light on the internet. And Brandy Zadrozny and people like her hate that you're seeing that. Notice that Zadrozny is not claiming that libs of TikTok is making this up. She never even suggests that. She is threatening them, and what she's doing is threatening them, you should know. And she's doing that because they're pointing it out. Noticing it's happening is their crime. And once again, it is happening. Children's Hospital in Boston, one of the most famous hospitals in the world, has admitted performing double mastectomies on children for no medical reason at all. There is no scientific justification for sexually mutilating kids. They are not doing it for a scientifically defensible reason. They are doing it because they believe in a very specific religious ideology. That's true. Is pointing that out an attack on gay people? Of course it is not an attack on gay people. It has nothing to do with gay people. It has to do with sexually mutilating children, which is wrong, period. It should be a crime, period. And yet suddenly it's very common. As we've reported on this show, UCSF, University of California, San Francisco Hospital, one of the leading hospitals in the world, is doing this as well. And they've said so out loud. This is an actual quote from their website. Quote, "Genital surgery is being performed on a case-by-case basis more frequently in minors. In the absence of solid evidence, providers often must rely on the expert opinions of innovators and thought leaders in the field." So your child gets sexually mutilated genital surgery that is irreversible, not on the basis of science, but on the basis of innovators and thought leaders. It's hard to believe that's happening. That quote was scrubbed, by the way, after we reported on it, not because it wasn't a real quote, but because it was a real quote. It was too incriminating. Once again, this is everywhere. A parent in Pennsylvania called Megan Brock decided to do some actual reporting on it because actual reporters choose not to. They look away and attack anyone who wants to know what's actually happening. So she filed a records request. And this week she obtained a 2017 email from Dr. Nadia Daushin at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Again, one of the most famous hospitals in the world, known as CHOP, a widely beloved institution that has helped very many. But in this case, what they were doing shocks the senses. In a communication with now HHS Secretary Rachel Levine, she wrote this, quote, "I'm not aware of existing literature," this is Daushin, "but certainly it is happening. I think we've had more than 10 patients who have had chest surgery under 18, as young as 15, and bottom surgery, 17. That's the sexual mutilation of children for no medical or scientific reason, simply because right now it is fashionable and consistent with a cult that has taken over a lot of the leadership of this country. But the fact remains, children are being destroyed by this. It should be a crime. The people who commit it should be in jail. But it's not just the sexual mutilation of children in hospitals. This is part of a larger trend, and the trend is this: adults crossing the line, and it has always been a bright line, into deep involvement with the sexuality of children. That has always been, and must in a civilized society always be, the most forbidden thing. It's considered unacceptable even among prison inmates. But now it seems to be growing in its prevalence. Consider the latest ad for the clothing brand Balenciaga. This was just uploaded on Instagram. As you can see, the photo shoot they're using to sell their products features a young girl holding a teddy bear in a bondage outfit. Then, in case you missed the point, the photo shoot also contains this image. It shows several documents. Most of them aren't visible, but what you can see when you zoom in, and of course the point is that you see it, is a reference to a U.S. Supreme Court case called Ashcroft versus Free Speech Coalition. That case struck down a law against kiddie porn. What is this? Well, it is what it appears to be. It's an endorsement of kiddie porn, of child pornography. What else could it be? We wanted to know. So we reached out today to Balenciaga to get their explanation, and they didn't respond. So we're going to have to take that on face value and ask, where's the moral outrage? We have an entire industry in this country comprised of moral outrage merchants. If you've ever been on Twitter, you know what we mean. Truly, an entire sector of our economy is devoted to attacking people for falling short of the mark. And here is a high-end retailer promoting kiddie porn in an ad on Instagram, and nobody notices. There's no boycott, there's no front-page New York Times editorial against it. And of course, Instagram let the advertisement run, endorsing kiddie porn. And by the way, if you have an alternate explanation for what this was, let us know. A child with a teddy bear in a bondage outfit and a Supreme Court decision striking down a kiddie porn law displayed on the table? What is that? Are we jumping to conclusions? Don't think so. It is what it appears to be. It's right in your face and no one's saying anything. Again, Instagram had no problem with this. Until Elon Musk took over Twitter, Twitter allowed hashtags that explicitly linked to child pornography. Nobody said anything because crimes against children are no big deal. It's thought crimes that are the real crimes. So if you said something about it, if you were libs of TikTok and said, wait a second, this seems to be abetting child molestation, which of course, that's what it's doing, you were instantly booted off Twitter. But the links to kiddie porn, they're still there. Well, now they've been deleted. Thank God. That's one improvement. So all of this has been happening out in the open, but NBC News hasn't bothered to report on any of it. Where was their report tonight on Balenciaga pushing kiddie porn in an Instagram ad? No. They're reserving all their energy to attack you for noticing. You're a stochastic terrorist if you point it out. And you need to be censored. Watch.
Content moderation is a hard task. What we know is that Twitter and where the bulk of this information is right now, because that's where the biggest accounts like Matt Walsh and Libs of TikTok again, where they sort of post this stuff. What's being done? Well, 2 days ago, we know that Elon Musk, who owns Twitter now, he just reversed the policy that Twitter did have against targeting and harassment of LGBTQ people, against misgendering transgender people.
So here you have people mutilating the genitals of children, running ads on Instagram promoting kiddie porn, and there's Brandy Zadrozny on NBC News. She's not attacking them. She's attacking anyone who notices and accusing them of attacking gay people. Once again, this has nothing to do with gay people. This is an attack on the sexual fixation on and mutilation of the genitals of children, pushing kiddie porn. There's nothing to do with gay people. That's an offense against anyone's definition of decency, and she's effectively defending it, and they all are. You're not allowed to notice it, or else you're committing violence. You're complicit in mass murder. Well, the people who are doing these things are fine. No one attacks them. An ACLU spokesman launched this attack on Doug Lamborn, a congressman from Colorado. Watch this. He voted against the Respect for Marriage Act and is a co-sponsor of Marjorie Taylor Greene's nationwide ban on gender-affirming care for trans youth. Huh? That's the crime? Children having their genitals mutilated on the basis of no science, no actual real medical guidance, no longitudinal study? There's no evidence this is a good idea, but GLAAD is for it, so doctors mindlessly do it, and you can't complain or else you're a murderer? Too crazy. These are our children. Can't put up with it. For her part, GLAAD's president declared that because of Saturday's shooting, you need to shut up while doctors mutilate children.
In terms of trans kids and gender-affirming care, the American Medical Association, the Pediatric Association, has confirmed that these are safe procedures. This is finished business. It's politicians and junk science who's creating some kind of debate or argument about this.
Really? Now, we realize she's paid to say that. Of course, all these activists are paid to say what they say. Very specifically paid. The ACLU is paid to say what they say. They all are. ADL's paid to say what it says. GLAAD is paid to say what it says. But the truth is, the no BS scientific truth is, there's no evidence it's safe. Where's the 10-year study on that? Do you have one? Oh, you don't have one. We have no idea what the long-term effects of puberty blockers are. We have no idea. We can't even guess as the long-term psychological effects of genital mutilation on a 17-year-old or 15-year-old. What? You have no idea it's safe. You're lying. It's not a safe procedure. We've spoken to a lot of victims of this barbarism, and it is barbarism. We did a whole documentary on it, and by the end of the documentary, we were more shocked than when we started reporting it out. Even people who support these procedures can't actually defend them, and that's the whole point. They have to make you shut up because they don't have any facts on their side. If you're not okay with child abuse, you're a murderer. And it's worked on a lot of weak-minded journalists who only care about status and acceptance by the group. But there are a few on whom it has not worked. At the top of that list is Chris Rufo. He joins us now. He's a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. Chris, thanks so much for coming on. I don't understand how Balenciaga, whatever they sell, can put an ad on Instagram today promoting kiddie porn and no one says anything.
Well, we're going to find out exactly what's going to happen to them. Certainly people are contacting them. They're in a lot of hot water. But the broader trend here is that what we're seeing is the emergence of a decentralized censorship regime. 100 years ago, governments in Europe and the United States would have to censor content from the top down, but they could be easily identified as the ones doing the censoring. Today, we have this consortium of left-wing activist journalists, left-wing NGOs and nonprofits, and then friendly administration officials in the FBI and the DOJ that work together behind the scenes to enforce public debate, to deplatform journalists who are actually doing the reporting on these issues, and then even calling for the prosecution and imprisonment of political opposition using the FBI. We've seen that on critical race theory. We've seen that on radical gender theory. And the brilliance of this system, if we're going to give them some credit, is that it's almost operating invisibly. So what we have to do is we have to bring it to the surface, just as you've done, make it visible, put a name on it, and stop it, because this is the greatest threat to the First Amendment in the last 50 years.
And I just find it remarkable, the passive aggression that is always at work with these people. You pointed out, and they're the victims. I'm sure Brandy Zadrozny will be on Twitter right now saying that you're threatening her life by sitting across from someone who mentioned her name. They are never held to account for what they are promoting, which is the sexualization of children. Let's stop lying about it. It's right in our faces.
That's right. And in that specific example, Brandy Zadrozny works for one of the largest and most powerful media corporations in the world. She has an affiliation with elite universities. This is someone who is in a position of power, who has actually made her career doxing and targeting random online citizens, Trump supporters, etc. She wrote a very sympathetic profile of an actual pedophile, a sex offender, a number of years ago. These are people that pretend to be the powerless, holding the powerful accountable, when in fact they're actually the powerful bullying the powerless, bullying independent journalists, and bullying people who stand in the way of the left-wing apparatus that wants to push this ideology on all Americans.
Oh, they'd hurt you if they could. Trust me. Chris Rufo. Thank you for joining us tonight. Appreciate it. So outside, say, the IRS and the FBI, the last organization you want to get a text from is probably the New York Times, because it's not going to be good news. They're out to hurt you. Let's stop lying. But unlike Dave Portnoy, you probably didn't save the text. Dave Portnoy saved the text that he got from the New York Times when they tried to hurt him. Oh, he caught them lying. He joins us in just a moment. Plus, the meltdown over Donald Trump, who's running for president, getting to talk out loud, is intensifying. So we're so for democracy that political candidates can't speak in public, because that's democracy. Well, CBS News got so overwrought they humiliated themselves unintentionally. We're enjoying that. We've got details. We'll be right back. Dave Portnoy is the founder of Barstool Sports. He's not especially political. He's not a right-winger or anything, but he's an American, so he believes in free speech. And because he believes in free speech and exercises it, other media organizations have been trying to destroy him. So he got the dreaded text from the New York Times. Can we talk to you? The story that resulted was written by a reporter called Emily Steele. And in that piece, Emily Steele writes this, quote, "The Times provided Mr. Portnoy with detailed questions about this article. Barstool executives did not respond to repeated messages. Mr. Portnoy did not provide answers." So you probably didn't think about that if you read it in the New York Times, but it turns out it's not true. They lied, and unlike most people who've been attacked by the New York Times, Dave Portnoy can prove it. He just posted this exchange he had by text with Emily Steele. Quote, "Hi, Emily. I know you're currently trying to dig up dirt on me as a bunch of women I barely know have sent me your interactions. I'm an open book. I'd love to sit down and have an on-the-record conversation with you just to clarify. I get to record it and use the footage as well." So here's how Emily Steele, the Times reporter, responded, quote, "We're happy to meet in New York or talk over the phone today or tomorrow. We can record audio, but not video. We do not accept those terms. If you would like to provide feedback in response to my email, I'm eager to hear it." So it turns out Dave Portnoy did respond and offered to talk to them. He just wanted to videotape it, because what would be wrong with that? when you're hiding something, you don't want that, and they are hiding a lot of things. They lied about that exchange, and Portnoy, unlike most people, can prove it. He joins us tonight. Dave Portnoy, thanks for coming on. So you grew up in Boston. I think you probably grew up in a family that took the New York Times seriously. You've lived in New York. You may live there now. Were you surprised by this?
No, at this point, I wasn't. But what you just said, I talked to my dad, who is somebody who, what I say, trusts the New York Times.
Yeah.
And that's the alarming part. Because, you know, in the way you just prefaced it, I reached out to her 7 months ago. Tucker, they've been doing this for nearly a year. I knew about this investigation. When I heard about it, I said, let's sit down, open book. I will answer any question you have. And the thing about it, and I don't care what your politics are, how you sit, I am the witness of a story you are working on for basically a year, and I am saying I will sit down with you. You can ask me anything. I'm not saying lawyers in the room, nobody, just me. I will answer every single question you have. She had no interest in that. She said, I'm eager to do it. 2 weeks went by. I didn't hear. I reached out again. I said, hey, I'm still here. So she did this. She worked on it for nearly a year, and then she went ghost, crickets. I didn't hear anything for 7 months, and I get the text, the list of questions that says, hey, we want all these answers to all these allegations in 48 hours. It would be the equivalent, if this is a court case, because that's what the Times is doing, try to create a case that I'm a scumbag and sway people, that you give one lawyer basically a year to present the entire case why this guy stinks, and oh, you have 30 seconds now to defend yourself. Who would ever do that? Nobody in their right mind. She never had interest in telling the truth. All she wanted to do was build a case against me. She never talked to any of my friends, anybody who would advocate. She never wanted to hear how we do responsible gaming training at our company. It was all a hit piece, and she had no interest in hearing my side of the story.
What's so funny is it's about your personal life, and you've got a pretty effervescent personal life, but I've been in the media for 31 years. You hardly have the creepiest personal life of anyone in the media. I mean, it comes to the media. These are creepy people. Why are they trying to attack you on this? Because you're disobedient, right?
Yeah, I think I've become politicized a little bit, but like what you said, listen, I don't care if people don't like me, Tucker. I really don't.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is give people the full picture. Well, I'm disillusioned. I know that's not what the Times does, but how can you say this woman has a Pulitzer? They should take that back, break it, and throw it in the river. Like, all I'm saying is let people decide. How can you do such a one-sided hit piece and then say you're the New York Times and you actually care about honesty? No, you don't. You're a liberal rag that is just like everybody else.
That's totally true, but you've got this legacy prestige that I really hope you do your best to tarnish, because it's not deserved. Dave Portnoy, thanks for coming on tonight and for catching them lying yet again.
Thank you.
So Elon Musk bought Twitter, as you know, a couple weeks ago, and he just held a Twitter poll, and he asked a really simple question: should we reinstate Donald Trump's Twitter account? He got more than 12 million votes, and the yes side won. So immediately, as promised, Elon Musk reinstated Donald Trump's Twitter account. CBS News was highly upset. They're for democracy, but not if it means presidential candidates getting to talk in public. So they got off Twitter, saying their security was in danger. And then on Face the Nation, which apparently is still a show, they interviewed a completely discredited NYU professor who claimed, buckle your seatbelt now, that the Russians must have hacked the Twitter poll.
So I think these polls are mostly a gimmick, and I would argue the people haven't spoken. The GRU has spoken. Twitter
Russian
has become,
intelligence, you mean?
100%. Twitter has become a playground for bad actors and fake bots. This poll is meaningless. This decision is meaningless.
How can that guy teach at a college? What a crackpot. Like the Russians aren't busy enough. They're in the middle of a war, but they've got time to hack a Twitter poll? By the way, maybe they are. He has no evidence whatsoever. Like none. Just kind of throws it out there, makes it up. Major claim against a government. Anchor just rolls with it. At MSNBC, a guest offered this measured take on the whole situation. Watch.
I'm absolutely disgusted. But what else do we expect from very white, privileged, cis, hetero men protecting each other, because we always mistake wealth and inheritance for genius. So yay, Elon Musk gets what he wants, his buddy back on the air, in order to finish burning down democracy while he finishes burning down the town square.
Attacking white people again. Why is that allowed, by the way? Why can't you just turn on MSNBC? White people, this! Is that okay? Is everyone all right with that? You can just like single out a racial group and attack them because of their skin color? I thought that was wrong. Didn't we have a whole civil rights movement about that? Apparently not. Vince Colonnese is a big-time radio host in D.C. and a very wise person. He joins us tonight. So you're for democracy, Vince. Does that mean that presidential candidates get to talk in public or no?
But, you know, for all the screeching the left does to us about democracy, it's amazing how much they go completely catatonic if an opposing viewpoint breaks through to a big audience. That is, they hate nothing more than that. If somebody's opposing viewpoint, so Kanye West says that he's against abortion, they go crazy. If Donald Trump might have an opportunity to tweet again, he hasn't even tweeted yet, by the way. If he might have an opportunity to do that, they go absolutely Looney Tunes. And the reason for that is that their ideas are so thin and indefensible that they realize that they don't want to engage in a debate on any of this. If you've been wondering why has the left gotten so crazy, it's because they've created this airtight echo chamber where no opposing viewpoints ever break their way in. Otherwise, these ideas would be battle tested, and that's how you end up with, oh, we've got to mutilate children. Oh, Joe Biden can control the weather if we only give him more power. Oh, the Russians stole the 2016 election, tried to do it in 2020, and just voted in Elon Musk's Twitter poll. This is all left-wing delusions that are fed by their intellectual flabbiness created by this environment where no opposing viewpoints are allowed to break through.
That's such a wise point. And maybe I'm too literal, I know that I am, but how can you, in the same sentence, use the word democracy and then go on to say that a political candidate can't speak? How can you have a democracy with no free speech? That can't happen. By definition, you can't have that. Correct? Or am I missing something?
These are all authoritarian impulses. Because look at what happened just a few weeks ago. You had Joe Biden step up to a microphone. He was asked, hey, what about Twitter? Are you going to assess, are you going to investigate them? And he's like, you know, we should probably do that. The federal government should look into the foreign business dealings of Twitter. What? The guy who is credibly accused of being bought off by Ukrainian and Communist Party of China interests is standing up there lecturing us about how we have to investigate whether or not Elon Musk is bought and paid for. The guy is allowing conversation, not foreclosing it.
Yeah. It's a pretty amusing moment if you let yourself be amused, and everyone should just for a minute a day. Vince Colonnese, great to see you.
Thank you, Tucker.
Well, so this sounds like something out of the Babylon Bee, which is also back on Twitter, but it's not, it's real. Joe Biden has promised to give reparations to the climate for all the oppression we've done to the climate. You remember the water fountains, carbon on one side, climate on the other. Well, he's going to make good on that. Reparations for the climate. But guess who's paying reparations? Not everybody. Not everybody. We'll tell you who's not paying reparations to the climate next. The Patriot Awards in Florida last week, we went for the second time. One of the things that you notice when you're there is that there's not a huge difference between the people who work at Fox and run Fox and the people who watch Fox. And if you've been around TV for a while, that's a rare thing. Made that point, actually. Here it is. The cool thing about meeting Fox viewers is every time I think this, oh, I can relate to that person. That person has the same instincts I do. Not just the same ideas, but the same gut reaction to things. I like those people. I mean it too. And I will say this. One of my rules is, don't suck up to your employer because that's kind of craven, right? You should always be a little bit against the man. Well, I want to thank my employer who signs my paycheck. But this is real. And I was reminded of it tonight because I was with people who work at Fox and people who watch Fox, and there's not a big difference, actually. There really isn't. They're nice. They're the kind of people who actually tip the waiter pretty generously. And those are the kind of people I love. Those are the kind of people I'm blessed to work around and live with. And those are the kind of people I'm blessed to have watch our channel. So there really is a difference. Everyone claims to love other people, but some people love them in the abstract. I'm sending money to a cause I don't understand in a place I've never been. And then there are the people who love the people around them in their immediate orbit. And we have a lot of the second category here at Fox News, and a lot of those people watch us too, and we are grateful for that. Anyway, we took a bunch of behind-the-scenes footage. Here's some of it. All right, so I should keep the obscenity to a minimum. When you have a microphone on, officer, oh, you're the one I want to talk to. How you doing? All right.
Who's the best guest that I can have on? And I said, Tucker, will you come on my podcast? And he's like, are you kidding? Of course I'm coming on your podcast.
The great Janice Dean, the bravest person at Fox, it's true.
Oh, stop.
You went after the governor of New York. That man, Charles Cougar, my producer, just got 2 deer in the state of Michigan. Thank you, Janice. That was wonderful. So we're in the basement delivery area of a large concrete building, and when you go to see Greg Gutfeld, the star of his magnitude, this is where you find yourself. We're entering the Gutfeld zone. Am I going? I gotta be honest, Greg, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I don't think I've ever eaten asparagus.
It's the ugliest vegetable.
I would never eat that. I would never eat that.
Can I bother you three? We're shooting a package for the channel. Sure. We just want to ask one question. It's super, super easy.
Okay.
Which is, what's your favorite show on Fox?
Okay, I got that's easy. We all say it at the same time because they're different.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
Tucker Carlson! We don't always tell everybody how we feel about Tucker, but he's always our secret favorite.
No, I was asking if Tucker Carlson was here. Harris Falk was a close second.
Oh, Tucker Carlson.
Tucker.
Worth watching. We'll be back 8 p.m. every night. Best evening. Once you love. Thank you. See you guys.
Can I get a picture with this one? Tucker, please. Thank you. Thank you. Come on. Thanks.
The sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. You know him, Tucker Carlson.
So our producers found people who said they liked the show? It's a little embarrassing. I hadn't seen that. There were some great people there, though. And again, the spread between the people who work at Fox and run Fox and the people who watch Fox is basically zero. And that's why people watch Fox, because we're not kidding. You can watch the whole thing, by the way, right now, if you're interested, on Fox Nation. So fossil fuels aren't just something we have. Fossil fuels are the reason that we have civilization. Take them away, and countries collapse. And the Biden administration doesn't appear to realize that, or maybe they do realize that, but they're doing it anyway. They just announced a $1 billion fund for something called climate reparations, because you have sinned against the climate. You discriminated against the climate. So the idea is to send money, your money, to other countries, because apparently we have too much money now, our debt isn't big enough, countries that have, quote, suffered damages due to the use of fossil fuels. But here's the best part. The country that uses the most fossil fuels, that emits the most pollution, that dumps the most plastic into our ocean, killing the most marine life, that kills the most fish with factory fishing, the country that seems almost determined to destroy the planet, that would be China, is exempted from the reparations. That's because China, which has a bigger economy than ours, the biggest in the world, is, quote, a developing nation. So that's like the definition of insanity. Victor Davis Hanson is a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, one of the smartest people we know. He joins us tonight to assess this. So China, the world's biggest polluter, pays no, quote, climate reparations. And we, who have a smaller, I think officially smaller economy than China now, we pay the reparations. How does this work?
Well, 40% of the people in the world live in India and China, and they're full bore on coal and natural gas, and they're not going to switch. So if this is just a virtue signal that's empty. And we should remember, Tucker, that we have $50 billion leaving this country in foreign aid every year. We have almost 50 million people living here that weren't born in the United States. They send out $60 billion in remittances. We don't even tax it. It's the most generous policy in the world. And it's all based on this idea that the Industrial Revolution of 200 years makes us guilty for carbon, when in fact it was the greatest boon that humans have ever experienced. It gave the third world, or the non-West, the green agricultural revolution, pharmaceuticals, high-tech, cars, and made life affluent and leisured to a degree never imagined, with no research and development in these developments. It was just wholesale jump-started into the 21st century based on fossil fuels. And you know, the problem with Afghanistan is the Taliban. The problem with Cuba is communism. It's not a coal plant in Pennsylvania. When you don't have private property, free market economics, consensual government, and you're stuck with tribalism and corruption, you're going to have problems. But it's not climate change. If these guys want to virtue signal our bi-coastal elite, let them just outlaw private jets for a year, or maybe Jeff Bezos and Zuckerberg and Gates can raise some money and give $3 or $4 billion and feel better about themselves. But don't do that expiation of guilt on the backs of the middle class that they really don't know whether to buy food or fuel every day.
I don't know how we wound up with a country that's run by people who hate the country. I mean, that can't work, can it?
Yeah, it is. They're never subject to any of the consequences of these utopian bromides. I mean, why have heated pools in Beverly Hills? Why is John Kerry on his Gulfstream? You don't need to do that. But this is a very cheap way of having a transnational body to pick victims and victimizers, and it's going to be staffed eventually by people like Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba that are not constitutional systems. And you know what that's going to lead to.
Oh, I do. What we have now. Victor Davis Hanson, thank you so much for that dark but accurate portrait.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So it's hard to believe this story is real, but it is, and many stories like it are real. There are a lot of victims of January 6th, and no, they're not all those phantom police officers supposedly murdered. They were protesters who have been treated as political prisoners, including one man who was arrested on January 6th for doing nothing violent and then denied cancer treatment in prison for months. And while being held on these ridiculous charges, his cancer progressed from stage 1 to stage 3. That man's fiance joins us straight ahead. Chris Worrell was in Washington on January 6, 2021, but there is no evidence that he ever entered the Capitol building, but he went to jail anyway. And then, like many other January 6th defendants languishing in jail, he was mistreated dramatically. Chris Worrell said he endured inhumane and abusive conditions. For example, guards refused to give him his prescription medications. He needed them to treat his cancer. He was suffering from a type of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He was not allowed to see an oncologist for months. At one point he passed out. He still did not get immediate medical attention. This is a time when rapists are getting out, when more than half of murders in the United States are not solved because no one cares enough to solve them. But this guy stayed in jail. Finally, last November, a judge ordered Worrell released because he wasn't getting proper treatment. So in the time that he was not getting his treatment for being in Washington on January 6th, his cancer progressed from stage 1 to stage 3. It's a tragedy. Trish Priller watched the whole thing. She is Chris Worrell's fiance. She joins us tonight. Trish Priller, thank you so much for coming on. How is your fiance doing?
He's doing okay since he's been home. He's had some major medical issues. He's had 5 rounds of chemotherapy. He's had major oral surgery, which he's still recovering from. He's had 2 more bouts where he's passed out and been unconscious, just like he was in the prison. High blood pressure and an unexplained high pulse.
So this was happening at a time when the people running the country, the Democratic Party, have decided that people who commit violent crimes aren't really criminals, they're victims of our racism or whatever. Why do you think your fiance was kept behind bars for months with no treatment for his cancer? And why were they so determined to punish him?
Well, the DC Gulag made a statement that these guys and women that are in the prison are political prisoners. So they're all being treated that way. Their food's being poisoned. Their recreation time is taken away from them. They're on solitary confinement. They're just denied all kinds of, basic human rights. One instance, there was about 44 men in the prison, and there was 1 toenail clipper to be used amongst all 44. Well, Chris had to cut his mustache off so he could eat his food with those nasty nail clippers.
Yeah. Well, anyone who lives in Washington knows it's famously the worst jail in the United States. There's been a lot of abuse in that jail over decades. So I assume you guys vote Republican. Did any politicians come to your aid, or do they just continue to ignore you like everybody else in Washington?
They're ignoring us. Yes, without you guys and the few others that are representing and speaking out upon us, our First Amendment rights are definitely under attack. We definitely need help. The more people we can get on our side, the better. We need lawyers.
Yeah. Yeah. So the lawyer who tried to firebomb policemen to death after George Floyd's death got less severe punishment than your fiance. So I appreciate, Trish Priller, you coming on tonight and telling your story, and I hope it shames people into defending you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And also I'd like to mention that we have a crowdfunding page. It's givesendgo.com/flotilla. And also that the Patriot Freedom Project has really helped us out as well. Thank you.
I hope someone does. Thank you so much. So Joe Biden's 80 now, fewer tasks than a younger man might have, but today staffers told him to pardon a Thanksgiving turkey. That's the tradition. It didn't go that well, and as always, we have the tape of it not going that well. Next. Joe Biden, shall we?
How many turkeys you got down there you raising?
Circle-S Ranch grows about 9.5 million turkeys a year.
God love you. 9.5 million turkeys. I tell you what, that's like some of the countries I've been to.
How's he doing exactly? We'll be on every night this week, even Thanksgiving.